Alright guys, Friday, November 10th. Got our first snowfall of the year. It's about -10 outside, -10 Celsius. I think it's a good day to make some soup. That's a funny looking car part. Yeah, those are potatoes. So we're going to make some potato soup today. Like I said, cold day, good soup, good hearty soup day. So we're going to make a simple soup. I've baked some potatoes off this morning, just simply salt, pepper, a little bit of olive oil, and just baked in the oven until they're fork tender, and then we just let them cool. So we've got them sitting there ready to go, ready to be turned into soup. Anyway, I'm going to give you a basic run through of the way I make my baked potato soup. And it's pretty simple, and there's some modifications you can do along the way that I'll talk about if you want to fancy it up a little bit. But I'm going to do the what I can consider the sort of bog standard baked potato soup, with no frills baked potato soup, you might want to call it. So we'll get started. Now I should mention, I'm not really good with quantities. When I cook, I basically don't measure anything, so this is kind of new to me. The only time I necessarily measure anything is when I'm baking. So anyway, I will try to measure. I'll try to give you cup measurements or teaspoon measurements, or maybe even a scale measurement for these items. But we are intending on making a pot full of soup. So about that size pot we're going to make. It's always good to have leftovers, and I'm sure I'll have company. Probably Crazy Les will stop by and want a bowl of soup, so we'll have some to give him. Anyway, so basic ingredients for this soup. Baked potatoes. So these could be baked potatoes that you have left over from last night's dinner or the night before's dinner. These are russet potatoes, but you could pretty much use any potato you wanted to. I'll talk a little bit more potatoes in the next little segment. Chicken stock. You can use fresh chicken stock if you've got it. Good on you if you do. I don't happen to have any in the freezer, so we've got a couple of Tetra Packs of the Campbell's chicken stock or chicken broth. You can buy the low sodium if you want. You can use chicken cubes, bouillon cubes if you wanted to. You can use canned chicken stock. You can use turkey stock, but you can use veg stock. You can make this completely vegetarian if you wanted to. Some flour you're going to need, some milk, and again, this is the skinny version. So you could use 35% cream or 15% cream or 10% cream or 3% milk, but anyway, we're going with the 2% milk. A few bay leaves. We've got some butter. After I've said this is a skinny soup, we're going to go with butter. And then we've got our leeks, Ontario leeks, some celery, and a Spanish onion. So those are our basic ingredients. Alright guys, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to prep our veg. Unfortunately I don't have a tripod, so it's not like you're going to be able to watch me chopping the stuff, but I'll try to give you directions, and I'll show you the end result once I'm done chopping everything up, and I'll give you some measurements at that point in time. First thing I want to do though is I want to clean up some leeks, and some of you may not be familiar with leeks. They are quite sandy, or can be quite sandy inside, so I'll show you how to clean a leek. Alright guys, I'm going to use 2 leeks for this recipe, and again I'll give you some quantities once they are sliced. But I've just taken the tops off, taken the bottoms off, and I've cut one of them in half to show you what I'm talking about as far as dirt is concerned. You can see how much dirt there is inside the leaves. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to wash this out, make sure we get all that dirt out of there before we go ahead and process this into slices. All we're going to do with this is we're just going to slice them down. And like I said, I'll come back and give you the weight, and I'll give you the cup measurement. Alright guys, we've got 4 cups of leeks, and that equates to about 400 grams. And you can see how we've sliced them here. We just basically sliced them, you know, not too thick. Remember, these are going to be going into soup. Anyway, this might look like a fairly large quantity of leeks, but these will sweat down, and they'll be reduced significantly. So anyway, there are the leeks prepared. We'll put them aside. Alright, next we've got 5 stalks of celery, and we're just going to slice these through. And again, I'll come back, I'll give you a weight and a cup measurement. Alright, we've got 350 grams, or 3 cups of sliced celery, and there you can see how I've sliced it. Just something like that. Try to get them fairly consistent if you can. So anyway, on to the next thing, Spanish onions. Alright, here's our lonely Spanish onion. 333 grams. We're going to dice that up. Alright guys, there's the Spanish onion all diced up, and it's about 2 cups approximately, and you know, just dice about that size, not too big. Anyway, on to the next thing. We're going to peel up the potatoes. Alright guys, on to the potatoes. So I mentioned I'm using russet potatoes. Well, russet potatoes are more commonly known as baking potatoes, and I'm using russet potatoes because I want to use a starchy potato. The starch potato will actually break down in the soup and will create a sort of a creaminess or a more velvety texture to the soup. That's why I'm using russet potatoes. However, I'm going to reserve 2 of the potatoes to actually dice them and use for garnish back into the soup afterwards, because I want some recognizable potato pieces in there as well. So I'll reserve 2 and just dice those and put it in at the very end just to heat the potato through. The expectation is that the 2 I put in at the beginning of the cooking will actually completely dissolve in the soup. Now, there are other options for potatoes. You could actually use a more waxy potato, less starchy potato, like a new potato, like a red skin or a new white potato. And the thing with those is you won't be able to get that sort of creaminess out of them as they break down in the soup, but they're excellent for garnish. So technically you could use the russets as the base part of the soup, and then you could use the new potato as the garnish in potatoes towards the end of the soup. So as mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and peel these potatoes. However, if you really wanted to, you could be a rebel and not peel them at all and just go, you know, dice them up and throw them in with a whole peel. I don't particularly like them unpeeled because the skins kind of just don't break down, and I just don't like the texture of them in the soup. So I prefer to peel my potatoes. I like to roast them with the skins on because they're more flavorful if you roast them with the skins on. Alright, so we've got 1,000 grams total, and that's about 6 cups of diced peeled potatoes. And we just got them diced, roughly that size. Again, got to fit on the spoon, fit nicely on the soup spoon. So again, we're going to reserve half of these. We're going to set them aside, put them in the fridge, and the other half we're going to get ready to build the soup. Alright, we've got about 70 grams of butter. That's about, 3 or 4 tablespoons of butter. Not really critical. Anyway, we're going to start to cook. Alright, we've got our pot on medium heat, as you can see. And we're just going to add the butter. And we'll let that melt down. And then we will add our onions, our celery, and our leeks. And we're going to sweat those down. So sweating means cooking gently without color. So we don't want to color this. This is sort of a white soup, so you don't want any color to this. So we want to sweat these down until they're slightly tender. Alright, butter's melting nicely. We're going to throw the onions in. And we'll throw the celery and leeks in. And we'll give them a good stir to coat them all in that butter. And like I said, we'll just want to sweat these down. Now, a couple variations on the theme here. I could have also used some chopped bacon, which would be nice in this soup, and rendered the bacon down and used the fat to cook the leeks and onions, or some of the fat to cook the leeks, onion, and celery. That is an option. I'm going to garnish this soup with crispy bacon at the end, so I haven't put bacon in to begin with. Now, you could do both if you really wanted to and you really like bacon, but and who doesn't? But I'm going to reserve the bacon until the end. The other thing I didn't add was garlic. Now, the leeks themselves have a bit of a garlic note to them, so I haven't added any additional garlic. If I was going to add garlic to this, I probably wouldn't use raw garlic. I'd probably actually go ahead and roast some cloves off and then add some chopped roasted cloves of garlic to the soup versus raw garlic. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and add my bay leaves now, and remember to count your bay leaves. So I've got 1 large and 2 small bay leaves in there. You want to be able to pull those out afterwards, so at least if you know how many you put in, you'll know how many to take out. It's kind of like being a doctor, with sponges and that kind of thing. Anyway, count your bay leaves. We are not going to put any salt in this because we are using the purchased chicken stock, and that can be salty in its own right, so we will season with salt towards the end of the cooking process. I am going to do the ultimate sin and add black pepper. So you're not supposed to use black pepper in a white soup, but I like black pepper, so I'm going to use black pepper. Hope none of my cooking school teachers are watching. Alright guys, I've just turned the burner down to low because we are getting it sweated down to a point where I want to start introducing some liquid to this mixture. I did want to have a quick discussion about herbs, and as I mentioned, I've only done bay leaves at this point. If you wanted to, you could add some fresh thyme or some fresh rosemary. They both have an affinity for potatoes. Again, like I said, I'm just going to do a simplified version of this soup, and I've just gone with the bay leaves. If you were adding thyme or rosemary, my suggestion is to actually tie those rosemary sprigs or thyme sprigs into a small bundle, drop them in whole. You can then sort of keep tasting the soup as you cook it through, and once you achieve the flavor profile from the thyme or the rosemary that you've added, you can then just remove the whole bundle of herbs from it and still have that flavor profile present. Okay, we're about to do what's called an aromatic roux, and to do an aromatic roux is the addition of flour to my mixture here. Normally a roux is just flour and butter to make it aromatic. We've got the introduction of vegetables, so I've got a half a cup of flour here. I'm not sure how much I'm going to use, but I just want to really dust the top of this vegetable mixture and stir it in. We've got our stock standing by, so we're just going to basically stir this into our vegetables, and then we're going to stir our stock in. I'd say we used quarter cup. So as soon as you've stirred your flour into the vegetables, you want to start adding some stock. So we're going to do that now, but we're going to add it in batches. So I'm going to probably add about a quarter of this liter, and we're going to stir it in, and we're going to dissolve that flour that we just put into this mixture. You can turn your burner up a little bit, probably turn it up to medium-high or so, just to get this process moving along. So there's what it looks like after the first liter of stock has been added. So we're now going to add the second liter of stock, and we're going to thin that out even more. Alright guys, both liters of stock are in, so we're just going to bring this back to a boil. And we want to make sure we stir it occasionally, because you don't want any flour sticking on the bottom, because then you'll have some dark lumps in your soup. So just stir it occasionally, bring it to a boil, then we're going to turn it back down to a simmer, and we're going to add our potatoes in. So I'll wait for it to come to a boil, I'll bring you back. Alright, it's just come back up to a boil, so we've got our potatoes standing by, and remember we've reserved half of the potatoes, this is the other half. So we're now going to add the potatoes, and we're going to turn this down to a simmer. So I'll turn that down to a simmer. We're going to add the potatoes. We're going to cook this for, I don't know, probably about half an hour to 40 minutes or so. We want to make sure that that celery in particular is tender, and we obviously want these potatoes to break down a little further and distribute. So basically distribute within the soup, make it nice and creamy. So that's what the objective is now, is to cook the celery, break down these potatoes, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, one more quick look after the addition of the potatoes. So it's definitely looking nice and soup-like. So again, we'll let this cook down, and we'll stir it occasionally. And remember, we still have some milk to add, so it's going to thin it back out. So don't worry about it getting too thick. We've got that milk to add still. Anyway, so we'll keep checking this over the next half an hour to 40 minutes or so, and we'll come back. So while our soup continues to simmer away, we've now put a small frying pan on the fire, and we've got some bacon here, and some side bacon, and we're just going to dice this up, and we are going to make it nice and crispy. Again, this will be for my garnish for the soup, one of the garnishes. So there's our bacon cooking away. You can see it's giving up all its fat, so we're rendering all the fat out of it. Again, we want to get this nice and crispy. So we'll continue to cook it until it's crispy, then we'll remove it and drain it on some paper towels and set it aside. Alright, that bacon is looking fantastic and smelling even better. We're just about to finish the soup. I've had a quick taste of it. Celery is just perfect. It's still got a little bit of texture, but it's not crunchy. That's just the way I like it. So we've got our reserved potatoes here. We've got our milk we're going to add in. First thing I want to do is I want to fish those bay leaves out. So we're going to go fishing, find those 3 bay leaves, and then we're going to add the potatoes and milk. The reserved potatoes are in. Now we're going to add some milk, and basically I'm going to add enough milk to get it to a point where I like the consistency of the soup. I don't want it to be a stew, So I definitely want it to be a little bit more soupy than it is right now. So I've got about half a liter of milk. I'll see if the whole thing will go in here. Yeah, that's a half a liter. I think we're going to be good there. Probably be a good time now to bring this back to a boil. And then we're going to check our seasoning one last time. We'll add salt if we think we're going to need it. Remember, the bacon's going to be salty as well, so careful with that. You're also going to have a few other garnishes to add, so we'll get to those in the next step. Final touch to this soup, you could add some chopped parsley if you wanted to, just for some additional color, but I don't think it needs it. Anyway, we're on to the final stage now. We're going to ladle a little bit out into a cup, and we're going to garnish. So I like my baked potato soup fully loaded. So fully loaded to me means cheddar, bacon, sour cream, and green onions. So we're going to garnish that up, and we'll give you a last final look at it. All right, I'm hungry now. There's my soup fully garnished. A little bit of cracked black pepper on top. Got a nice roast beef sandwich on the side. So we're going to enjoy this. The smell in here has been driving me crazy for the last couple of hours. So time to eat. Anyway, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video and it will inspire you to make some baked potato soup. Thanks for watching. It was great.